Is Nathan here? Oh, he's connecting to audio.
Mhm.
Oh, connecting to audio.
It's
He's
hard.
muted. He's
I
muted.
I hate this thing. I hate this thing so much. I'm gonna just throw this computer out the window. I'm so done with this. I'm about to just take it to the scrap yard. Not even sell it. It's not worth anything. It has no monetary value in this world.
The following is a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome in, students of the game. My name is Alex Baumann, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts today, Gray Oldenburg and Nathan Glidewell. Guys, we got some Charles Barkley to discuss, some Trevor Lawrence news, and some college sports to go over. But first, we'd like to congratulate the Birmingham Stallions on winning the first ever UFL champion 25-0 and capturing their third straight league championship. Nathan, you've watched this Stallions team the past 3 years. Is it time for them to move to the NFL?
Uh, Look, I'm not gonna compare them to any NFL team because there's obviously a difference. This is basically your semi-pro team compared to your actual professional team. But I'm not gonna ignore the amount of talent that the Birmingham Stallions have had over the past 3 years, who they continuously go and put talent in the NFL. So, do I think there's guys on the team that could compete in the NFL on that team? Yes, but as far as like being in the NFL, no, not really. I'd still think you go back and look at the Panthers last year. I mean, that team would still probably dominate the Stallions, just because there's so many different things that go on talent wise. But still, you got to take notice of the dynasty they have put together in the USFL and going into the UFL now. Really just not contested in any part of the games they've played. They avenged their loss last night to the San Antonio Brahmas, 25-0 in a shutout. You hadn't even seen a shutout in the UFL this season. So I think it speaks huge numbers and huge volumes of what Skip Holtz has been able to do as the head coach to constantly prepare the guys he has given, especially after losing numerous guys in the NFL because he's able to develop them so well.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think it's
absolutely.
great.
Oh,
Go ahead,
sorry, I
Gray.
interrupted you there, Alex. No, I was just going to say, I think Nathan nailed it. It's the what they've done to put players into the NFL has been the huge difference in between Birmingham and some of these other teams from the USFL and from the UFL when they combined. Um, that's huge, and that's what semi-pro is for. That's what the G League is for in the NBA. That's what all these that's what the minor leagues are for. That's because it's where you go and develop and grow and into the player that you want to be. And Birmingham's done a fantastic job of developing those players while also winning. And I think it's also, this is why Birmingham doesn't have an NFL team because the NFL's terrified of Birmingham. We'll just come in and win. It'll be Super Bowl after Super Bowl after Super Bowl for Birmingham, and it won't be fair. So yeah, don't give us an NFL team. I know NFL, you're really scared.
I think it's crazy that their general manager is the same age as us. I believe he's 21 or 22. So for him to be able to build this team at that age and have the ability to scout the players for replacements, I think it's
Mhm.
pretty insane. Moving on here, Charles Barkley announced last week that he plans to retire after the 2024-2025 NBA season from broadcasting. We all know him from inside the NBA with him, Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, and Shaq. What does this mean to lose Charles Barkley? Because it looks like TNT might not get the rights to NBA games. They're kind of still in negotiation with the NBA and trying to get a small package to keep the inside the NBA and all that. But what does it mean to lose Charles Barkley if they were able to return that Crudy right now?
Yeah, so in that industry, it's all about the money. It's all about rights and that sort of thing. And TNT is going through an end of a contract deal. But we all love the inside the NBA crew with just like Alex said, with Charles and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie and those guys, and even the occasional guests that they've brought on throughout the years. They're just their camaraderie and their ability to make it fun while still giving correct analysis, unlike some of the other guys on some of the other networks. Um, and also using their experience in college and in the NBA. Especially the three with Kenny, Shaq, and Chuck.
using their experience not only to analyze what's happening in the NBA or what's happening in the game that they're talking about, but also what's happening outside the NBA and around these players, and being able knowing what these players are thinking and going through and that sort of thing. Um, and Charles is an unbelievably funny guy. He's grew up in Leeds, went to Auburn, just a true Southern guy, just wants to play basketball and talk basketball, and he's really really good at that. So it's going to be hard. He's going to be a hard guy to replace. Guy It's not easy to fill a really good broadcaster or a really good analyst's shoes, and it's going to be really hard for them to find somebody if they were to retain the inside the NBA and get those rights back. It's still going to be very hard to find somebody after this following season to replace him.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing you look at is not only what Charles Barkley has done for the NBA as a player, but now you come and look from a broadcasting perspective. The notoriety that he has created for the NBA, people can turn on and tune into TNT and they see Charles and Shaq and Kenny and Ernie and all those guys and just automatically recognize what they're talking about. It's funny, it's family friendly, it's a fun experience for people to watch, and I think it has drawn a number of kids into watching the NBA who might not have been into it before, and it's a very welcoming path. And I hate to see it go away, but that's just how life is. That's how money works. And for Charles to serve, I mean, what, 25 years in broadcasting? It's been a long time, but he's done a fantastic job, and I hate to see him retire, but he deserves to retire after what all he's done for the NBA.
It's going to be weird if that crew returns after the 2024-2025 season, then without Charles Barkley, especially Shaq, because you think Shaq and Charles Barkley really bounce stuff off each other, and the comedy of that show really comes between those two guys. So it's going to be hard to replace that relationship that they have with each other, Shaq and Charles Barkley, but then the relationship all of them have together. It's hard to have three old timers there and then come and plug in if it's Draymond Green or Vince Carter or Jamal Crawford, who's going to fill that role if they get the rights after that season, how they're going to be able to fit themselves into that crew, because it's really hard to build that camaraderie together. The Inside the NBA crew has really done a great job doing that. And it's really going to be hard to watch an NBA game or watch an Inside the NBA thing without Charles Barkley being there, because he walks into a room and lights it up. He's just a great person, great personality, and it's hard to imagine the NBA without him. Moving on to Trevor Lawrence here. The Jacksonville Jaguars and quarterback Trevor Lawrence agreed to a 5-year contract extension worth $270 million, with $200 million guaranteed and an average salary of $55 million per year. This makes Trevor Lawrence tied with Joe Burrow for the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. Do y'all agree with Trevor Lawrence getting this much of a salary bump and being the highest paid quarterback in the NFL?
Wow. And $270 million, that is more than $250 million. That is so much, but that is what these quarterbacks are being paid nowadays. You talk about the Joe Burrow contract, the Patrick Mahomes contract, Jared Goff's contract, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts. All these guys are getting paid, that $45 to $55 million per year. That's about the range where you've got to pay these quarterbacks to keep them around long term. Do I think Trevor Lawrence is quite on the level of some of those guys that I just mentioned? I don't, not at all. I think he is a very young quarterback. He showed flashes last year of the quarterback we thought we were going to see coming out of Clemson for Jacksonville, but I don't know if he's deserving of $270 million, but the Jaguars are seeing what these other quarterbacks are being paid, knowing that Trevor Lawrence does have a lot of years in his future. They went ahead and wrapped him up for as long as they could, for as much as they could. So I think the Jaguars need to continue building around Trevor Lawrence. I think that's going to help him. I think that's why he had such great success at Clemson with the players that he had around him, not only on the offensive side, but on the defensive side as well, which they're doing. They're slowly, getting, better as the years go on. But it has been a slow rebuild for the Jaguars. But this contract is crazy. Unbelievable amount of money.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and agree with you. I don't think he deserved as much money as they gave him. And I understand the quarterback market and what it is in the NFL at this current moment, but you're talking about 100 million guaranteed, and you look at some of the other quarterbacks listed. I mean, even guys like Josh Allen are on that list, and I don't think they deserve that much. I'm sorry. Like it takes away from the team aspect too, because then you can't go out and get as many free agents as you want because you're restricted by the contract of what you have given your quarterback. Where Trevor Lawrence is currently in his projection, like he's young. We get where he is, and it's been very slow for the Jaguars. At what point do you decide, hey, this isn't working? Because you reached the playoffs one year, you weren't able to win a game. You continue to struggle in regular season games that you shouldn't struggle in. It's just really frustrating to see, and it's frustrating for Jaguars fans. But if your quarterback continues to struggle at times, I think we go back to his freshman season. How many interceptions he threw? He had a huge problem with that. He still turns the ball over a decent amount. And really outside the quarterback position, I think they need to improve the wide receiver room a little bit more. I liked what they had last year. I think Calvin Ridley did decent last year, but he's gone now. Or I don't even know where he is, honestly. But it's just a whole ordeal where you're paying the quarterback so much money that it takes away from the rest of the team, and that's just where we are in the NFL. And especially you look like at guys like Deshaun Watson and where the Cleveland Browns are right now, struggling because they're paying their quarterback so much money. Joe Burrow, he's making a ton of money as well. And you can break down the Bengals the same way. I know they reached the Super Bowl and lost, but still, outside of that one really crazy run, they haven't had as much success in the postseason.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Trevor Lawrence came to the NFL, I was told he was the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. And I have yet to see him show me that he's the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck. He's shown flashes when he brought the Jaguars back from that 27-0 deficit in the playoffs. But since then and before that, he's really been pretty lackluster. I wouldn't even have him in the top 15 quarterbacks in the league right now. And these quarterbacks in the league are not that great. They're very top heavy. I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, guys like that. But Trevor Lawrence to get paid as a top quarterback in the league, it's stupid, but it makes sense for the Jaguars because you invested the first overall pick in this guy, and you can't let him walk away. And you expect him to be this quarterback that he's supposed to be, the best quarterback prospect since Peyton Manning. So you're hoping that in this 5-year contract he just signed, he'll turn into that at some point. But it comes down to, can you build around him? They've done a pretty okay job doing that. Nathan talked about the Calvin Ridley acquisition a couple of years ago. He played last year, pretty okay. You lose him to the Tennessee Titans. You bring in Gabe Davis from Buffalo. He's been pretty up and down outside of that game he had against the Chiefs where he set, I think, an NFL record for receiving yards in a game or something like that. And then you have Christian Kirk, was one of the most overpaid receivers in the league, I think, last year. And you have Evan Ingram at tight end who's looking for a contract here upcoming. And you just signed Josh Allen, your outside linebacker, to I think the biggest contract for an outside linebacker in the NFL's history. So this Jaguars team is going to have to build around Trevor Lawrence. Can they do it? They've proven so far, not so much. He doesn't have that great of an offensive line. Nathan loves Cam Robinson. He can sit here and talk all day about Cam Robinson and his inabilities.
Oh, gosh.
So I hope this works out for the Jaguars. But as we've seen in the past with quarterbacks signing these massive contract extensions, it does not work out a lot. No. It doesn't work out. I mean, Nathan mentioned Deshaun Watson. That looks very stupid right now. Very, very stupid. Derek Carr got a big contract extension.
Oh, come on, guys. Why do we have to talk about Derek Carr?
Daniel Jones. I mean, those two guys right there speak for themselves about how bad they are. So, once again, I hope it works out for the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence because he's supposed to be this great quarterback. But what he's shown me so far, I'm really timid on saying this is a worthy contract extension. All right, moving on to college sports here. The Big 12 is exploring the possibility of selling its naming rights to a corporate sponsor that could drive hundreds of millions of dollars into the conference. Nathan, last week we talked about the sponsors on the field, and now we're going to have sponsored conference names, or it's looking like that. What are both of y'all's thoughts on having conferences being named after sponsors that they have?
It's awful. What are we doing here? I'm not trying to watch this promotional deal. This is not what college football is. It's not a promotional deal to get people to drive to your brand. It's not that. It is supposed to be football. And for them to sell their name rights, I know they need more money. I know the Big 12 is struggling after the SEC sold their two best teams. But gosh, I mean, to really sell out and have a brand take over your name is just awful. I'm sorry. Like, could you not find other ways to make money? Could you not do well? Like, are you not successful enough to make money? Like, I don't understand. It's not a problem for the SEC. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
And it's not a problem for the Big Ten or however much you want to call it now. How many teams they got? But they don't have to go sell out for their name. I'm sorry. That is just a really crappy move.
Yeah, Nathan nailed it. Not only did the SEC take their two best schools, but they took their two most money-driven schools. Like Texas brought in so much for the Big 12. And then when Oklahoma got really good, Oklahoma drove in so much for the Big 12. And losing both of those to the SEC was massive. This is weird. No, we're not going to have the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, and the Amazon 12. Like, no, absolutely not. That is ridiculous. Um, I, this is just this is so weird. You know, going back to last week, I wasn't here last week, but the naming rights on the field and on the jerseys and stuff like that for the schools and stuff like that. What are we doing? It's all about the money. And we've talked about this with, you know, the players, and we talked about it with NIL and the coaches and all the aspects that come to this. But now the big corporate companies are seeing this, you know, their eyes are widening and they're going, oh my gosh, we could buy a conference, put our name as the conference name. You know, it could be the Amazon 12 network instead of the Big 12 network. Come on. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, according to the Action Network, a naming rights deal could bring in $30 to $50 million a year for the Big 12, which would, divided among its 16 members now, would be about 1.9 to 3.1 million per year for each school. So, I mean, that's a lot of money for one person to put into a school. Which is something I pointed out in the article. That's enough to buy like an offensive coordinator. That's about what you get. So I mean, it brings in money. At this point, you got to bring in any money you can, whether it be through putting corporate sponsorships on the field, sponsorship patches on the jersey, naming your conference. But for the Big 12, who's a Power 4 conference, to be doing this, I think is a little absurd. It makes more realistic sense for like the Conference USA conference or the Sun Belt or the MAC or the American Conference to try to do this. But for the Big 12, for how big of a name they are, even though they did lose Texas and Oklahoma, it seems just kind of sorry for them to be looking into this. There's got to be other ways to make money than selling your name to be, it's been rumored to be the All-State 12 or the big All-State Conference or something.
Oh my God.
No, we're not doing that.
Oh no.
But once again, these conferences, these schools are trying every way they can, trying to figure out any way they can to make money. And this is just one avenue they're exploring right now. I guess they're going to probably end up doing it. At least probably the smaller conferences would, because they do lack making a lot of money. But I would not be surprised if we're sitting here and the Big 12 does it. Greg Sankey, the SEC commissioner, has been sort of weary of it. He mentioned Red Lobster and then getting bought by a private equity firm and then just declaring bankruptcy this year. So he's getting kind of weary about it. And I don't think Greg Sankey would bring the SEC into something that he doesn't think would be profitable and be good for the conference. So I'm not worried about the SEC, but I am worried about the Big 12 and their ability to stand after if they do a deal like this.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine poor Kansas basketball?
God.
Big all-state 12.
That's so stupid.
Mayhem.
Moving on here. Matchups for the 2024 ACC SEC Basketball Challenge were announced last week. On Tuesday, December 3rd, the matchups are South Carolina at Boston College, Cal at Missouri, Kentucky at Clemson, Florida State at LSU, Georgia Tech at Oklahoma, Ole Miss at Louisville, Arkansas at Miami, Notre Dame at Georgia, Syracuse at Tennessee, Wake Forest at Texas A&M. And then on Wednesday, December 4th, you have Auburn take on Duke at Duke, Texas at NC State, Alabama taking on North Carolina at Chapel Hill, Pittsburgh at Mississippi State, Virginia at Florida, and Vanderbilt at Virginia Tech. Two teams were left out of this from the ACC due to how big their conference is in comparison to the SEC, and those were what was the other one? It's on here somewhere. It's Stanford, sorry, SMU and Stanford. So those two teams were left out this year. I think SMU was more expected because they came into the conference being willing to take less revenue. I don't think they taking any revenue from the conference for the first couple of years. So that makes sense there. Let's talk about Auburn and Duke. Great. Just give your preview on what this matchup's going to look like going into the 2024 season.
Whew. First of all, I think getting Duke in this matchup means so much to Auburn and so much to the program. And being able to go to Cameron Indoor, that is huge. As much as I despise Duke and everything about them, I'm really looking forward to this matchup. Duke's had some weird years over the past few years. With the Mike Krzyzewski not there anymore, John Shire taking over. Them getting the #1 recruiting class this year, bringing in 4 or 5 stars. Then returning Tyrese Proctor, and obviously getting the #1 player in the country, Cooper Flagg. This is going to be a great matchup. I'm really excited about this. You get to play the best. I think, the past 2 years in particular, Auburn has really tried to play, really good mid-majors, and they've come across some really good ones like Murray State, like Appalachian State, like teams that are going to win their conference, but have really struggled to schedule the big boys. They tried to schedule, when they scheduled with Indiana for this past year's game, Indiana was unbelievable at the time, and then they just kind of weren't very good this year. And then they tried to schedule with Baylor, and Baylor was really good, but they weren't as good as when they scheduled. We scheduled them right after they won the national championship in 2021. So they've really struggled to get those big time marquee matchup games, non-conference. Their big matchups have been, Tennessee, Alabama, Kentucky, those schools. This is huge. I really like this. I can't wait to see how Duke looks at the beginning of the year. Duke is always going to look different every single year as they bring in all new guys. I'm excited to see how they mesh to play against a very, very experienced Auburn team. This is going to be 2 completely different age groups here. Auburn's coming in with 10 seniors and 2 freshmen, and Duke is going to have, I believe, 7 freshmen come in to this game. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for this matchup. I'm just mad that it's in Cameron Indoor and not in Neville Arena because I don't like watching games in Cameron Indoor.
Not a big fan of the Cameron Crazies?
Not at all. Not at all. Those people are lunatics.
All right, Nathan, flipping over to the Alabama Crimson Tide here. They get their rematch against UNC from the Sweet 16 a year ago. And before that, they had that quadruple overtime game in the Phil Knight Invitational. So these teams have a pretty storied rivalry these past couple of years. So what do you expect going into this game being played in Chapel Hill?
Sorry, I'm so flabbergasted over seeing Cal at Missouri. I'm over here taking it back. So that thing is so weird. Anyway,
North Carolina at Boston College. What do we do?
I know. That's what I'm like. Wow, Cal is really in the ACC, and I see Texas over here. Oh, it's whatever. It's whatever. I gotta get with the times, I guess. Speaking on Alabama at North Carolina, I go back to last year. And what Alabama was able to do in the Sweet 16 against North Carolina, the back and forth game, how exciting it was to watch, and then even the year before that, with the Alabama-led Brandon Miller team, and it's crazy to see what kind of rivalry has kind of formed over the past couple of years. And now for Alabama to have this matchup going to North Carolina, going to Chapel Hill to take on a team they beat in Sweet 16. I know that North Carolina will be hungry to get revenge. But I look at what Alabama has going for them this year. I believe they had the best odds to win the national championship at this current moment in time. They have a very stacked and talented team. This is more about proving what you can do as a team, really discovering how much adversity you have to go into an away site like this earlier on in the year and prove what you're made of. And you speak on that. Alabama also has tough matchups, like they have to go to Purdue. And I think that's another big thing. I believe they also play Illinois. So there are definitely a lot of other big schools out there that are very, very good in the game of basketball that they had decided to test themselves against. I'm really a big fan of what Nate has been able to do with this scheduling, really preparing Alabama for the tournament earlier on the season, and really figuring out what he has as a team. Because I can sit here and talk about talent all day long and how much talent Alabama has, but if they cannot mesh together well as a team, if there's not enough team chemistry, if they don't go out and prove it on the court, then it's not going to matter. And scheduling games like this and getting games like this is a big way to proving what you're actually able to do on the court, rather than just sitting here and looking at a piece of paper, looking at a roster saying, wow, these guys are going to win the national championship, because it's a lot different once you get out on the court.
Nathan kind of touched on it a little bit, but including the matchup with UNC, Alabama has 6 games against teams that reached the Sweet 16 last year. The other ones are Houston and Las Vegas, Illinois and Birmingham, Purdue, Creighton, and Tennessee, and UNC, of course. So Alabama has a pretty tough schedule. It's probably tougher than last year's schedule, which Alabama did struggle with at the earlier parts of the season. But as we saw, once they got to the NCAA tournament, it felt like the games earlier in the season kind of prepared them for that, especially the Clemson game, because they ended up playing Clemson in the Elite Eight. So games like this, like Nathan said, Nate Oates has done a great job scheduling them, testing this team early, building up that team chemistry, putting roadblocks in their path to seeing if they can get through them. And Alabama has done that, did that last year, has done that in the past. So I'm excited for this matchup. It'll be hard for me to cheer for one team because I'm a fan of both. I'm a North Carolina and Alabama fan. So either team wins this game, I'll be happy about it. There's no love loss between either team winning or losing for me. So outside of those two matchups, guys, which other matchups are y'all looking forward to seeing outside of Cal at Missouri, Nathan?
None at all. None at all. I do want to say that the Tuesday matchups compared to the Wednesday matchups are like night and day. Wednesday is so much better. If there's one other matchup besides the two marquee ones that we just went over, I would be excited about, would be Virginia at Florida. I love that. You know, I think Tony Bennett is more on a hot seat than people really realize. You know, he's coming off, you know, in 2018, they got the number 1 overall seed and then lost to the 16 seed that time to UMBC, which shocked the world, and came back and had brought back everybody, went on that national championship run. And since then, their brand of basketball has not been to what Virginia's standards or what they expect Virginia standards to be. And they have just not been very good. They've dwindled off the past few years, and the ACC has, you know, gone by them after their dominating 2 or 3 years that they had. And getting this matchup with a really, really good Florida team who's returning some key pieces like Walter Clayton Jr. and a young coach with Todd Golden going to Gainesville like that. I really like the matchups on Wednesday, you know, and also talking about this, what's going to happen in the state of North Carolina on December 4th. You know, Auburn at Duke, Alabama at North Carolina, Texas going to NC State. That's going to be an exciting 3 games, all, you know, very close to each other, happening at the same time. I'm very excited for those matchups.
Yeah, I think when I pick out here, besides, you know, Cal at Missouri, because, you know, that's just the marquee matchup that everyone's looking forward to.
Yeah.
I will be excited to see what Kentucky is able to do at Clemson. You got a fresh team that Mark Baumann has put together through the portal. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they mesh together well, especially going at Clemson. Clemson has been able to compete inside their conference very well the past couple of seasons, going to the Elite Eight the past season. I know they're losing a lot of guys in this offseason to the draft, but what they will probably be able to put back together with their recruiting, they'll definitely be ready to face Kentucky once December 3rd rolls around. And I know Clemson fans will pack out that stadium to play a team like Kentucky. So it's going to be this big milestone set for Mark Poe to go to Clemson and try to take on them. And to come out with a win would be huge for that Kentucky program. Just to know where you are currently with your head coach. Because a lot of things are just up in the air with Cal leaving, with the number of players they brought in, how different it looks. So and maybe it settles some of those rumors or some of the uneasy feelings for those Kentucky fans.
I'm looking forward to the Ole Miss at Louisville matchup. Ole Miss, pretty hot start last year. Granted, that schedule at the early part of the season was very, very easy for Chris Beard and those guys. But Chris Beard is a proven winner. He did it at Texas Tech. He tried to do it at Texas before he got fired. But Ole Miss, they're a pretty good team. The SEC looks pretty open this year, outside of Alabama being pretty dominant and Auburn bringing back a lot of veteran guys. But Ole Miss, I think, could be that third or fourth best team with how good their coach is and the players that they've brought in and retained. And you look at Louisville, you fired Kenny Payne, who was horrendously bad at Louisville. You bring in Charleston coach Pat Kelsey. Nathan got to see that team play last year, played Alabama in the tournament. Pat Kelsey did an amazing job in the portal, getting guys from Charleston, getting guys from other Power 5 schools. So I think seeing Louisville play Ole Miss, two teams that I think are probably on the up and up when it comes to their college basketball programs, which have been pretty down these past couple of years. I think is a matchup I'm looking forward to in the early part of the season and seeing how they prove themselves, because last year neither team really did prove themselves well. So talk about the ACC challenge, guys. Do you like it more than the other challenges the SEC has done in the past?
Yes, I do. I think the SEC Big 12 challenge got a little old. And there was nothing super wrong with it. But I really do like fresh new matchups like we're seeing. So I love switching it up. In a few years, I hope they switch it up again. I think that's fun. I think that's entertaining. That keeps people engaged. That keeps, teams playing teams that you don't normally play, on a regular basis. And I like it. And I like the ACC challenge. Last year it was kind of a little underwhelming as an Auburn fan. And I'm sure an Alabama fan as well. Auburn hosted Virginia Tech, who sucked, and Alabama hosting Clemson. That ended up being a very important game. But it was kind of underwhelming. Now look at what Auburn and Alabama are doing. Right? We're going to the two blue bloods and on Tobacco Road. That's huge. That is so huge. And then you get the other matchups, just like we mentioned, the Ole Miss and Louisville. You would never see that. Virginia going to Florida, Texas going to NC State, Kentucky at Clemson, Cal, Missouri. Even though I don't understand that. Even ones like Syracuse going to Tennessee. I think Tennessee got real lucky with this one. But that's an interesting matchup and not one that you would see on a regular basis. That's not really one that Syracuse would probably schedule, to be honest. I wouldn't. I wouldn't schedule at Tennessee if I was Syracuse, but no, I'm excited for this, and I think it's only going to continue to get better as we see more matchups.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I one thing I did like about the Big 12 SEC challenge, just the consistency of the games, how competitive they were. I go back and think of how many times Kentucky and Kansas played. I think that's one thing that you look at the ACC and SEC challenge is different. The two teams that land the best matchups are Auburn and Alabama now, and that's more relative to how much success they've had the past couple of seasons. And then you have Kentucky going to Clemson, which I don't think that's a terrible game at all. I feel like that's just where they are as a school right now. And I think that's more reflective of how modern everything is in SEC basketball, rather than you go back to the Big 12 SEC challenge. I mean, Alabama wouldn't get a crappy matchup; they'd get Oklahoma or something like that. But it was never the best team in the conference or one of the best teams in the conference. It was always that middle pack team, and now everyone just gets a different look of who all they have to play, and it brings on new challenges for every single school. And it's going to be exciting to watch. Yeah, especially last year. I think I go back to last year and look at what the Clemson Alabama game was. And I think that was definitely the most competitive game out of all the ones in the challenge. I know you mentioned being bored with your Virginia Tech matchup, Gray, but I felt like it was very, very beneficial for Alabama to have played that game. I mean, you go back and look if they played them in the Elite Eight. So having these different looks prepares you more for the postseason more often than not. I felt like it did for a few years when you had the Big 12 SEC challenge, but especially now, I feel like being able to get several different looks at new schools will contribute a lot more to postseason success, not only for the SEC, but for the ACC as well.
Yeah, I'm just kind of mad that the Big 12 Challenge is not there anymore because I wanted Alabama to play Kansas to get their Ryland Griffin game
Oh yeah, that would be
this season. I would have paid money to go to that game, and I really, really, really would have hoped it would have been at Coleman Coliseum because those fans would have been pretty mean toward Ryland Griffin. That's all the time we have for today, guys. Thank you for listening and watching, students of the game.
This has been a special presentation of Tony Kurre Radio.